You will just have to kill
A historic moment is before us. After months of speculation, finally, the International Criminal Court has issued warrants of arrest for President Rodrigo Duterte. And after a dramatic number of days and a few hours of uncertainty, the former president was officially taken to The Hague to face potentially trial on allegations of crimes against humanity. This is obviously a major development for the International Criminal Court, which has faced a flurry of criticism over its inability to effectuate its earlier warrants of arrest against world leaders such as Vladimir Putin of Russia or Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel. And soon the ICC will have its moment. It will have a chance to try one of the most high-profile figures ever for crimes against humanities, or at least allegations of crimes against humanity. So what are the implications for the Philippines? Will this intensify the conflict between the Dutertes and Marcoses? Will this divide the nations? Will this potentially trigger a civil war? Are we talking about the end of the Duterte dynasty? And what will the Duterte team do in order to make most out of its current circumstances? Will it rally the nation as the supposed victim of an international foreign body that supposedly kidnapped the president? Or the Dutertes are indeed facing an existential crisis, like never before? And what about President Marcos Jr.? Was this an indication of decisive political will, or did he not just have any choice at all? And how will not only the president, but also the genuine opposition and civil society groups respond to this momentous development? And will we finally hear more from the actual victims, thousands of families victimized by the extrajudicial killings allegedly under the former administration? We have two special guests to discuss.
Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us. And of course, also Dean, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
A lot to discuss today. Obviously, as of this recording, there are like live developments in one of our air bases right now in Villamor. We're still trying to get to the bottom of it. Is it a question of the president being whisked away directly to Den Haag, The Hague, in Netherlands or not? Because otherwise, some would say there'll be political chaos. Now, let me ask first about this before we go to other important issue, because we want to talk about the implications for SARA impeachment and for midterm elections and beyond. But let me start with you first, Dean. Were you surprised that Digong chose to come back? Because some people thought he will just stay in exile in China or Hong Kong at least.
Well, yes or no. Yes and no, actually. Yes, in a sense that there might be some other information that we don't know happened that resulted the decision of former President Digong to come back. And perhaps no, because he's already in China. I mean, it's considered a heaven for him. I mean, it's very cozy with President Xi Jinping. He's a regular in that place. So perhaps there might be some extraneous factors that resulted to the decision of...
You mean some negotiations behind the scenes, China, Philippines, Netherlands?
It can be a negotiation. It can be a failed
negotiation
well.
also. Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Or there's also some political play that President Digong might also thinking about this possible scenario that he either capitalized or, again, as I said, might be miscalculated on this move of come back here in the Philippines.
Prof. Ranjit, what about you? Are you surprised? Is this classic Duterte? Oh, you think you can threaten, I'm going to come back, and then oops, it looks like he didn't anticipate what happened to him.
I think it's a mix of all of that. It's a confluence of all of these things. Did we know that the ICC was going to issue a warrant? Yes. I think a lot of us in the know already knew a few days ago that it's going to happen.
Over the weekend,
But things happened very quickly, and we don't know the full story why he came back. I mean, he could have gone back to Davao directly, straight, or found a way to go to Cebu and Davao, but he went here. So there's a political calculation that or miscalculation that we still are trying to unravel. But whatever the case may be, the government obviously acceded to the request of the ICC, and it is what it is now. So why Villamor is a big question.
Yeah.
You know? The statement of the government is quite clear this morning. There was an arrest warrant issued. They merely implemented that warrant of arrest in cooperation with the Interpol, which is already here. And, you know, this is the official statement now. It's now in Villamor. It's not in Camp Crame,
Yeah.
which is kind of a unique thing.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah,
Or in PNP
interesting.
Custodial Center.
Yeah, or PNP custodial. After all, the
Yeah.
warrant is more informational than anything. It opens a lot of questions, no, as to how this was implemented and why so quickly and why in Villamor in particular.
Yeah.
Well,
And
I mean, I asked luminaries like Justice Scorpio about
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
and he himself admitted that this looks like a hindi naman extraordinary rendition,
Yeah.
but it's a little bit outside the box in the
Yeah.
sense that I think the anticipation of Digong was that he will come back. Maybe some religious group will have
Yeah.
some big rally, not naman EDSA 4,
Yeah.
and then they will wait for an RTC to issue
Yes.
something, then they'll appeal it, then it goes to Supreme Court. So by that time, election is over, you know, who knows, right? But apparently the government like, oh, you're not gonna enter,
Yeah.
we're gonna whisk you away most likely.
This is where the miscalculation is,
Yeah.
no? But you know, they could have milked it dry politically, and this is why I'm saying I was talking to Gary earlier, Dean Gary, that it would have been political suicide if they had
He stayed.
stayed in
Yeah.
China. No, this is the way it was supposed to go, but it didn't turn out that way. That there will be some time to foment some sort of political support or base building. Which, by the way, would by sympathy, no?
Yep.
Or it would have
Because
helped their senators.
we still love underdog. I mean, that
Yeah.
kind of idea.
So then
But
he's
it
gonna
didn't
have a neck
Yeah.
brace, and then he's
Yeah,
in a
but obviously
wheelchair, and then he cannot walk.
But
Next thing-
obviously, the government had another thing in mind. And so he's now isolated politically in that place, Villamor. And there's talk about him being whisked off directly to a third party,
Yeah.
third country.
Interpol
Yeah,
denied.
yeah.
No, but I want to go back to this. I mean, Din, were you surprised by the nimbleness, if I can, let's just put it, nimbleness. Again, I don't want to use rendition, because you don't want to give ammunition to any side. Let's just say, did we underestimate maybe BBM? Because let's be honest, a lot of us have been critical of the president, feeling he's like overcorrecting. Because his name is Ferdinand Marcos. You know, he doesn't want to come off as a dictatorial. There's a sense that he did not exercise his prerogatives as a president when he was facing clear existential challenge, at the very least, from the Dutertes. Do you think we underestimated BBM?
Honestly, I was flabbergasted with what happened today. And
Right.
in fact, it's like in military battle, it's like a blitzkrieg. Sudden attack, all of a sudden, we're all
Lightning
surprised.
strike, yeah.
So, and I firmly believe that, you know, it's really planned very well. In a sense that why so from Terminal 3 to Villamor, it's the proximity is very near, right? So, and Villamor can cater for the other types of aircraft that can immediately fly someone, no? Remember, that's the landing site, for example, of some dignitaries or even some guests. So, and do it in a way that we're all caught off guard, no? In a sense. So that's something. And even, for example, I'm also wondering why the former President Duterte has this vast legal expert, so-called expert and supporters and team. You know, why this group did not prepare a templated, you know, for example, Rita Fabian's could be filed today, or even a TRO.
I mean,
to the Supreme Court.
preemptively, before it comes
Precisely.
back.
It's very easy for them. Why all of a sudden? No? So, because if, for example, if Duterte card in the morning, they already go to the Supreme Court. But what
Yeah.
I heard recently, or what I heard and read, no, just only this afternoon that Attorney Torion went to the Supreme
Well,
Court.
maybe he doesn't have the best league. I mean, one of them, I don't know, is in Macau or something. I mean, you have former spokesman Harry Roque, very, confidently said, no, it's not true that this is ICC, this is the General Torre case. Obviously, turned out wrong. You have the case of Salvador Panelo contradicting the other. Like, you have lots of weird, petty rivalries and questionable legal claims. I think the thing with Panelo, for instance, he was coming up with this idea, wala naman daw hard copy. He loves hard copies, right? Remember with the Senator Trillanes case, we don't have a hard copy of his amnesty. So maybe he didn't have an ace team also. Maybe this also exposed the hollowness of his legal team or political strategy, perhaps.
Or maybe something will happen tomorrow, It's
We don't know,
It's going to
That's
happen
another thing
tomorrow.
also.
So,
What do you mean? Like, the
gonna-
government will blink?
no, I don't think the government has. We will blink any. There's no
At
choice.
this point,
At this point, it's
Yeah,
it's
you
out
crossed the
there.
Rubicon.
You've crossed the
Yeah,
Rubicon already.
Yeah.
But let's see. The lawyers are going to go to court. We know that already. They went this afternoon. We'll see what it's a habeas corpus writ of habeas corpus that's they're going to invoke. That's a very important thing, you know. And let's see how the government will respond to it. What needs to be emphasized is how government is, articulating this to the people. You know? I think it's important what they've done. And this going back to your original question, that they're doing this very, they're taking this very seriously and they're doing this very carefully. So the articulation that you're seeing in the media is that, number one, this is an ICC, a long-standing case filed in the ICC, and that's correct to emphasize that. Number two, government was really just basically assisting the ICC in implementing its warrant. And third, that the president is in good health, he's being taken care of, and that his rights are being protected. And if the government continues to articulate that way, I don't think there's going to be any sort of political backlash, serious political backlash or challenge because of what's happened.
I mean, he's going to go to a first world country. I mean, last time I said Den Haag, actually, they have pretty good accommodation. They have better healthcare system. And of course, for me, and I want to discuss the big issue, right? For ICC, this is also a golden opportunity. Their Putin thing is not going to go anywhere. Their Netanyahu thing is not going to go anywhere. The Taliban one, I don't know which cave those guys. But this one, they have a chance. This could be their golden
This is
goose.
asserting their legitimacy, and making the argument that the ICC is still a relevant body. Now, of course, all of us believe that the ICC will give due process to the former president. Right. And for the everyday Filipino who's still bewildered by what happened, the government has to articulate along the lines I suggested that this is something that was started by a case started by human rights victims and has been long-standing. So the work done here has been extensive. It wasn't done overnight. Definitely, one could argue the way the government handled it was political, deeply political. But it's going back to your statement. It's a statement for the government that we mean what we say and say what we mean about human rights violation, about holding people accountable, and about asserting, justice in this particular issue.
Is it a signal to senators and some other people like BBM means business? Because I think one of the problems we have seen is that there's no respect for the office of president, or fear, I would say. You had an imperial presidency under Duterte. On this show, we had congressmen and senators openly saying, nakakatakot ng panahon ni Digong. You cannot even abstain, right? But under BBM, it's a much more consultative, open. But now it looks like if you are a senator and you're saying, okay, apparently maybe I'm underestimating, maybe he means business.
But before answering that, I just like to add up on the possible narrative that the government can do.
Sure.
Perhaps it's also the opportunity to bring back all the statements made by former President Duterte with regard to ICC.
Yes.
I mean, he's very comfortable that he's going to face ICC.
Yeah.
No, and
You mean hinahamon niya yung ICC?
I mean, he said a lot of times that, and he also said that, ako naman lahat yan. Di ba? So it's about time for him, since he said that in the past that I will take all the cudgels on this case. So, harapin niya to. Yun siguro yung magandang panindigan natin. Well, for your questions, for your next question,
to the signaling.
Going back to the signal, what this meant to our senators, that this guy is really into this business business of really enforcing what is in accordance to law, its commitment. It seems like the process is quite somehow very slow in a sense, but very
deliberate.
Deliberate at the end of the day.
But it has to be emphasized, and building on what Dean Gary is saying, that this was a process started by the ICC. People have to understand that this was not government's initiative. It was the ICC. Even before this administration took over, there was a case already filed. And this is just part of an evolving process of,
I agree.
Of the ICC finally doing its investigation and finally, coming out with a warrant. The important thing for government is to emphasize that important reality, that it's not government initiated. It's just that government is acceding to the ICC request. I think what the best thing that government could do now, the two things the government should do now is to articulate why they're acceding And number two, to start talking to the relevant stakeholders to go back to the ICC. That's the major statement the government should be making over the next week. It isn't about Duterte. It's about saying that we believe in the concept of the ICC. We believe in, it's part of our broader belief about a rules-based international order.
Because you cannot ask for help on international law in West Philippine Sea
Yes,
and then
that's the point.
selectively
That's
say
also
no.
Yeah,
so,
selective saying.
It's your geopolitical interest.
And maybe this is the opening for the government to come back to now.
Yeah.
What does the survey say? 6 out of 10 Filipinos, the last time we did a survey,
Please.
2024, said that number one, they believe that we should go back to the ICC.
Correct.
So
And it's not
60%.
sure.
60%.
54 or something like that.
But
So
it's a
6 out of
majority.
10, 55, yeah. Majority over the majority. Number two, a majority of Filipinos want the former president to
cooperate.
not to go to jail or anything like that, but to be able to defend himself, against all these cases. They believe the government should cooperate with the ICC. So 2 elements. The government should cooperate. Number 2, it should go back to the ICC. And by the way, that was what? 2024. And we released that. It's all accessible to the media. And this has not changed, okay, markedly since we started measuring this. So that's where Filipinos stand. Now, of course, we're running another survey soon. We will ask about this again to see what the perception is in 2025, especially after everything that has happened. But clear in all of our surveys that the idea of the war on drugs, the idea of the government's response to the war on drugs, the issue of the ICC, the issue of President Duterte being put to justice, because of the cases filed against him before the ICC, majority of Filipinos support, number one, the government response as far as that's concerned, as far as the war on drugs is concerned. And number two, that they should go back to the ICC. And number three, to cooperate with the ICC with regards to the cases concerning President Duterte and the war on drugs during his administration.
It's important, right? I think we have to also remind people, and this is where the grassroots should come in.
Yes.
Because this was a grassroots driven. Before ICC came in, there were communication by multiple people, including Senator Trillanes, who's now in his moment of glory and is posting the moment they forwarded the communication. But they're not the only one. You had Las Cañas, you had Matobato, people from the heart of darkness of the DDS squad.
But you have to also emphasize that a lot of this was started by the left. The
Progressives,
progressive groups were the ones who,
Bore the brunt.
bore the brunt of this, and they started as early as, I think, 2018, 2019.
Yeah, or earlier even.
They've
But of
been
course, together
fighting
with the
for this.
church, perhaps. No?
And the church,
the church too.
I think those are the two major sectors that really worked very hard for this. Yes, I know Senator Trillanes articulated this and made people more aware of this.
Use his bully pulpit as a senator.
bully pulpit to do that. But the left really worked hard for this and paid a lot, to push this case forward. And if there's any movement forward, it's really because of the efforts of the left.
Let's talk about how do you think progressives, left, or even liberals have to come on this? Because, a few weeks ago, there was a little bit of a back and forth because some people were not happy with how, for instance, Senator candidate Bam Aquino seemingly dismissed the SAR impeachment issue, which I want to discuss shortly, as a kind of a political issue. People felt, well, this is a question of accountability. What are you talking about? Is it important now for all of these people, liberals, progressive, left, let's just call it the left liberal candidates, to be absolutely clear na hindi ito hidwaan ng team, Marcos versus team Duterte. Ang usapin dito talaga yung dapat pananagutan yung mga tao na
definitely,
nasangkot
I
dyan
think
sa AJK.
the denominator for all of this group is yung how do we value human lives. That's the essence of it. I mean, people come together to file a case against the excesses of the campaign against war because we simply disregard human rights. It's like throwing a trash somewhere else, and we took notice how blood, across the streets. We saw it almost every day. May bloody Sunday, may mga ganyang mga kwento pa nga nangyari.
Bigla sa Bulacan, there's
sa Bulacan, sa
operation,
Cavite, etc. And regardless of your political affiliation, regardless of your religious belief, ang sabi ko, ang common denominator dito yung how do we value now the human lives of people. So, ang tanong nga, ito rin ginagamit halimbawa ni former President Duterte na yung war on drugs is simply to support, is is basically promoting human lives, but you are killing people. Basically, people were killed because of this campaign. So, nasa yung pananagutan niya yan. So, importante that they should be reminded to all these people that it's not left, it's not the church, but those people who believe that the due process, which is now become very evident and been used by President Duterte. May due process dapat tayo. Kasi yan yung mga hindi na-observe last time.
But he's gonna get a due process in The Hague. That's the irony,
that's
right?
certain.
That's the
That's
thing.
certain, yeah.
He's still gonna get the due process.
Yeah, that's
while he
certain.
didn't
Even
give
here, I
that.
think, kita nyo naman, maayos naman ang pagsilbi sa kanya at yung ibang mga reaction nga ng mga tao, yung mga netizen natin, buti pa sila President Duterte, nabasahan ng Miranda rights na tinuring ng maayos ng ating mga kapulisan and something like that. And
Kaysa sa mga binaril, no?
Kaysa sa mga
Kian de los
Tokhang lang,
Santos.
oh.
Unlike Kian de los
Kian de los
Santos.
Santos, so iba pang mga
Natokhang.
so-called collateral damage. Ako, hindi pa kayo mga natokhang. Yung mga collateral damage, yung mga tinamaan ng ligaw na bala, like Kian and among other else, because they're just simply there. Sabi lang natin, sorry, kasi nandyan kayo. Pero buhay ng mga tao yan.
There's obviously the aspect there of, the grassroots level. But on the part of the government, they have to also kind of explain how did they go from saying we're never going to cooperate, we're going to
exactly.
keep... You know what I'm saying? They have a slight problem, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Because if I don't mention... So now they have a slight explanation to do, which is, no, we really had no choice. We had to go with this because I remember back in the Marcos was like, no.
December 2023, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that's the slight wrinkle in the how do you think they should deal with that? Yeah.
But it's political. People will read it as that, and I don't think that there's anything the government can do to change that.
So panindigan mo na lang.
Panindigan nila kasi, pero the thing is, it's something that is not isolated, meaning it's deeply supported. I just told you the data.
Yeah.
And we released that on about the same time President Marcos said we'll study joining the ICC. So the logical outcome of this, because as far as the Duterte case is concerned, that's done. It's been served. The warrant was served. He will be given. And by the way, let's emphasize, former President Duterte is innocent, as he
Until
will be
proven
guilty.
otherwise.
Yeah, otherwise. So rights will be protected, and it's important for us to emphasize. So what's the next thing for government? Kasi ang babaw naman kung ito lang. I think the next thing for government to do is to encourage all the stakeholders to consider going back to the ICC. Diba? I think that's the important policy.
Senate. This goes to the Senate.
Yeah, this goes to the Senate. No? Number 3, and I think this is to build on what Dean Gary was trying to say, that this is more than the characters. There's a real policy issue here. Do we respect human rights in this country? Do we not strengthen our institutions to go against impunity the way it happened? These are deeply troubling issues, that are now slowly being addressed by these baby steps, because justice has to be served. Now, again, President Duterte is innocent. Okay, he will be proven guilty in a ICC court
of the highest
on the
standards.
highest level, and these things will be discussed. Now, if he's proven innocent, and he made a very spirited defense of his policy in the Senate. That he had to do this, the country was in imminent danger. And if he goes with that argument, that's a very strong argument to make.
But he also implicated himself, some would say, in the sense. Like,
Yeah.
some would say, baka yun pa yung nag-accelerate. Kasi in the Quadcom pa, di ba? Hinaman
Several
pa niya.
times.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, now let's talk about the Senate. Because one signal to the Senate is, hey, baka naman, it's time for us to rejoin the ICC and
Yes.
finish this nonsense.
Yeah.
Because Duterte, the only reason he got out of ICC is because he wanted to have impunity. Except the Supreme Court, by the way, was very clear na may residual
there's
jurisdiction.
Yes.
So, wala siyang takas dyan. But the other one to the Senate is signal because there's another Duterte in this equation, Sara Duterte, who's the vice president. And if God forbid something happens to Marcos any moment, she'll be the president, and then suddenly we could be in a different world. Totally, right? Let's talk about that aspect, the Sara impeachment. Could this actually accelerate the movement towards creating the foundations for the reason I'm saying that is because it took us 1 month to interpret what is forthwith, right? Which is very ironic because the word itself says dapat mabilisan na. How do you see the Sara impeachment
I
aspect?
think, yes, it will accelerate. Number one, because we have a very serious president right now.
Or he made it clear na I'm
Very
in
clear
business.
that this is my line.
Yeah.
And this is my mandate. So, pag hindi pa nabasa ito ng mga senador natin, hindi ko na alam how do we understand that, kung they still continue to navigate the current political dynamics. No? So, at sana maging consistent ito. No? Of course, syempre, ang problema nga natin ngayon, for example, no, we're not singing in one voice. Eh.
Yeah.
Even for example, yung statement lang recently kaninang earlier, statement lang ni Senator Amy, parang she's not in favor in a sense of what happened to President
Which is
Digong.
expected. I mean, we
expect. Pero sabi ko nga, for the longest time that she's doing this back and forth, playing with different camps, it didn't help her. No, especially look at the polls, tens of the polls. No?
She's not doing well, right? I mean, those candidates who are kind of like, I don't
No,
know.
in our survey,
She's doing okay?
she's back in the top 12.
Okay.
Which is,
But
by
she
the
should
way,
have been doing better, so I would say
maybe
no, of
top
course.
6.
Obviously,
From
obviously
the
she should
top
have been
six.
doing better.
Yeah.
But
She should
she's
be in
still down as far as the last 12 months are concerned. She was with the top 6 for a long time, actually, for close to a year.
Yeah.
And then she started declining as people began to misunderstand, who she was supporting, what she was supporting. And, other
Or struggle
candidates...
to understand.
Yeah, it's a
I
struggle
cannot
to
blame
understand
people.
her now, even for us,
Yeah.
no? But I think she's gonna make it because she's now comfortably in the 8th spot in our last survey, and her trajectory is moving up. You see, I always focus on the final numbers, but actually it's the trend that's important. And in her case, it's moving up. Some people are still in the top 12, but their trend is going down. And this thing that happened with former President Duterte could affect
That's what I'm saying.
the senatorial
race.
in the sense we have Senator Bongo.
Well, Bato
Senator
could
Bato.
face also a case soon. We don't know. There
soon,
could
we
be a
don't
wave
know.
too. There could be a wave too. Yeah.
But the thing is, this could have a sympathy. This might create some
Rallying
sympathy.
around the flag.
Yeah, and rally around these candidates, no, who are deeply affected by all of this. And we don't know. That's why we're going to have to
Or
measure
not,
that.
right? I mean, it's
Or
also
not.
it's also possible that there could be a brand damaging here. That there could be a down. I mean, like the question I want to ask is like, so who's now the spokesman for the movement? Is it Bongo, who's doing best in the survey and was a close associate of the president? Is it Sara Duterte, the daughter who has her own battles to fight? Is it Paste? Is it Bato, the loyal soldier, or maybe not? Maybe next thing we know, he's not here in the country anymore. Is there clarity who's also going to speak for the family now
Wala
that the
kasing
fought?
bravado, unlike ni President Duterte, itong mga...
Well, Bato has a lot of bravado.
Yeah, but that combination of charm, wittiness, and bravado,
And authority.
Consent, in fact, parang yung hegemon,
Yeah,
diba,
wala
sa
silang
international
Gramscian,
relations, it should be a consent. Kahit you're a more powerful entity, but walang consent sa mga tao, yun ang tingin kong may problema. So, it's somehow meron konti si Sara, may konti si Bato, but Bongo, si Senator Bongo remains to be the special assistant of the president till today. You keep providing pizza to the family, etc.
No, but he was one going there to provide medicine.
Yeah.
He was there. So, this framing of it na he's really old, which he actually is, no? And
He's 80,
and
there's no debate about it. It's 80 years old. So,
na kailangan
pero kasi ni Richard Garing na meron bang mag-stand out as spokesperson? Ako, hirap kasi tapatan din yung character ni President Duterte.
He's such a big hole to fill, right? Yeah,
so it's
bigger than life.
difficult.
Bigger than life
But then
character.
Sara has to stand,
She has to step it up.
step in and stand up, no?
But doesn't that make her more vulnerable to
yes,
counter?
it is.
Yun nga, di ba?
Yun ang
Especially
posibleng
given
yan.
the fact that, we're seeing that she's not as articulate as her dad is. Doesn't have the same... Yeah, but I think right now, from the political standpoint, she has to step in now.
Yeah.
In fact, they
have no choice.
They have no choice. But this is also an opportunity politically for them.
In theory, again, everything was in theory. Because I'm
Yeah.
sure Duterte, when he came back, thought he will have that, there will be huge people supporting him.
We don't know. It could still be.
Could still be.
And the sympathy could go to
Either
senatorial candidates who are trailing. Like, for example, Senator Bato. He could actually go into the top 12, which I think is very, very real, no? It could actually galvanize, consolidate support, that base that's, wavering, into a stronger base to ensure at least 2 or 3 wins, no? As far as the Duterte opposition is concerned, because there's the regular opposition and the
But Bongo has been doing very well in the
Excellently,
surface,
yeah.
and
This is safe.
But they say one reason is precise because he's not very directly involved on the Duterte question. But now, can he even afford to play it safe the way he has been playing it safe, right? And that's now there's the risk factor there was not. I mean, if I'm Bongo, I would have rather just waited until elections and easily top 5, right? Who knows?
Easily,
right? Easily top. Although there's always the
we don't know. We don't know. We don't know. Yeah.
But now, hindi. The cards have to come out. Sino ba talagang loyal? Who's, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, it's much more polarized even. It's much harder to be wishy-washy, right? But going back to you, Dean, let's talk about the Sara impeachment issue. Do you think that now there will be pressure? Because forget about Amy Marcos, Robin Hood Padilla, ganun. I know their stance is clear. But there are many kasama sa alyansa ng administrasyon na wishy-washy din sa issue ng Sara impeachment. Kung ako si BBM ngayon, like, tignan mo, I'm willing to go after Digong. Baka kayo, nagbe-benefit kayo sa admin, your machinery and all. Maybe you want to speak out because we have candidates of Allianza. Pag tinanong ng anything controversial, thank you. Maybe you have to stop the thank you one. Right?
I think I'm pretty sure people from Malacanang has knowledge of all of this, and they might bring the axe, or they might somehow do the
scalpel, maybe, like not the axe.
Or, you know, they'll become more candid to their candidates and talk about, hey, let's call spade a spade.
Candid to their candidates.
It's really about that. Kasi if not, I mean, simula pa lang yung local election, so there's still many things to happen. No? And of course, syempre, tandaan natin, only midterm elections is always a Malacanang election. No? In a sense that...
Of course.
It's a referendum.
It's a referendum Malacanang, and the resources, all the network are all in. And this might happen. I mean, well, this is happening right now, but they might double it up because of what happened, no?
To seal the deal.
So,
the deal.
I think, kaya nga sabi nga kanina, na with the actions of President Marcos, it will somehow signal then, in a sense na, teka, ito na talaga ako. Ano na ba kayo ngayon? So, it's about time to confront each other. Pero I agree also, sasabi nga ni Prof. Ranjit earlier na, alam naman mga Pinoy, may tayo sa underdog na, will treat it as, inapina matanda niya, inapina, etc.
Hindi, kaya nga dapat lumabas yung victims or the true underdog.
Precisely. They should
because they're the underdog.
That's what I'm saying, the articulation should be
the narrative,
that actually there are bigger victims here. The real victims here
the real victims.
are the 6,000 or 10,000.
Who will never get a due process and they're no longer here.
Will never go through the same process.
Let's look long term, right? Because obviously, mukhang this is a new chapter pa lang in the yung hidwaan ng dalawang higanteng pamilya. In theory, we saw third forces, yung mga kapatid natin dito sila, the Tulfos, right? But in theory, do you think this also provides a room for progressive or even new voices? Because 2028 suddenly is looking even more open after this, right? Like, no one is immune na. Like, the climate of impunity is withering away and possibilities are springing into action. How do you see I mean, let's be honest, we are, in a way, as academics from different institutions, we have ideas of modernizing our democracy, and I don't think we are in an ideal situation. So let's just call them, for modernizing forces, democratizing forces, how do you see their prospects, and what do you think they should do in the coming months and years ahead of 2028?
Well, number one, if the government will be very successful, not only, bringing President Duterte to The Hague, or, for example, making all the process very clear to the people, it's open for floodgates of possible new forces as well that will come to the picture. No? Kasi nga, it's very clear that our I don't want to call traditional politicians, but our existing politicians continue to navigate with the forces.
The establishment.
From the forces from both the Duterte camp and the Marcos camp. So, if Marcos will be, somehow continue to implement his mandate and his commitment to the international community and upholding legal laws, as mentioned earlier by Prof. Ranjit nga na maging consistent ang gobyerno kasi nga we uphold, for example, the PCA ruling and itong ICC. So, naging consistent ang mensahe ng ating gobyerno na it's bringing back the important role of two-level games playing both at the national and international level.
The US-China aspect.
Yun ang importanteng ma-highlight din dito. So, kung yan ang magiging narrative din talaga in the coming months, in the coming weeks, so it will open the floodgates for other forces to come in and perhaps be served to become a third force or forces. Parang 1992 elections.
Yeah.
It can happen like that.
Very
no?
open-ended.
Yeah, so, posibleng mangyari yan. So, yung plurality of votes na lang ang titignan din naman natin.
Do you foresee again, the reason is it's hard to do regression analysis when suddenly you're moving into a new era altogether. We might be at the cusp of a completely new physics of electoral contestation. I mean, but having said that, Prof. Ranjit, from your experience of covering Philippine politics, including when you were teaching me Philippine politics as your student, do you foresee an unprecedented opening similar to how from 1991 to 1992 anything was possible? Danding could have won. If Imelda and Danding came together, they would have been back in power. Miriam Defensor was almost there. Some would say she was actually there. You know, like, could we go in a 1992 situation?
Well, I don't know. I'm not.
Or is that even ideal?
No, I don't know if I'm that hopeful. No. One thing's for sure: two families that were together are now going at each other. That will always open a space for other forces. Okay. Number two, this government has to mean what it says and says what it means about good governance, real people-centered, sustainable development. If not, none of its arguments will be matter in 2028. Now, it's having a hard time, sustaining, its development path, no? And that maybe if that's going to happen in 28, then you have a space really for an alternative. Because now you've had the Marcos, you had the Duterte. Their brands of politics are in question now. Can they deliver on development? Can this brand of populism really create sustained political and economic development for all? Now, the jury, as far as Marcos's administration, is still out. They're trying, and they've been sidetracked by this fight to the point that now they're making it, the focus instead of poverty alleviation, hunger, dealing with the rice cartel. So, my message to the administration is, your brand of politics will be undermined. Its legitimacy is constantly being undermined by poor governance, by lack of development. The only way forward is not even to make the Dutertes relevant. After today, they're slowly becoming politically irrelevant. Why? The Sean is going to go through a trial in the ICC. The vice president, I don't know, miscalculated why she resigned from the DepEd. Now she's really politically irrelevant, no, with no budget. But the problem is this administration has no air. There's a speaker that is competent, but he's not popular at all. So there's no air. So that's to answer your question. The field is open. The field is open for Arisa. The field is open for
even Lenny.
Of course,
and
Lenny. In our surveys, Lenny is still
number 3.
Yeah, she's still the alternative, but she's very far away from the horizon. No? The number one candidate is still Sara Duterte. Next is Rafi Tulfo, and then you find a Lenny.
Yeah.
Very far away, but still there. So all I'm saying is that all of this infighting among our elites will always create openings for other forces. But the question always is, are they progressive forces? We have to bring the people back in to the discussion. The more we educate our voters through shows like this, through the media, through our advocacies, the better you can realize some sort of change, the change that you were talking about, some sort of trajectory for change. With an unenlightened voter, with voters who are misguided and misinformed,
or intimidated.
Or
with
intimidated,
warlords,
But the intimidation factor, you can see that in less and less as the mainstream. It's more a fringe thing in certain areas. But by and large, when you look at our, this is what we have to understand. When you look at our electorate, more than 30% are 18 to 24. If we add those until the age of 30 and below, that's close to 50%.
Wow.
So that's a force to be there. And by the way, in 4 years, they'll still be in that same band. They'll still be the youth vote. So our goal now, citizens, as advocates, is to stop talking about Duterte versus Marcos. That isn't the future of the Philippines. The future of the Philippines is, informing, empowering our citizens with good information so they make better choices, citizens in a democracy. It's bringing people make democracies work, Richard. And elites, going back, lagi naman nag-aaway yung mga elites natin eh.
Yeah.
But nothing is happening to the regular person. And that's why we have to keep this government accountable. Yes, to some, maybe this is important, not for the Duterte versus Marcos thing, but for the broader issue of justice, social justice, to end impunity, to show everyone that institutions matter and that nobody's above the law. This is important to emphasize more than the chismes and the popcorn, the infighting. And that's important for our own. I was talking to my class. They're saying, we hope that President Duterte can defend himself. They were saying. But they believe that he should be held accountable for whatever has happened in his administration. And they felt that, maybe he will get better treatment in the ICC because, that's an international court where everybody's watching. Yeah. But then again, you go back to the basic question. Will us bringing the Dutertes to the ICC and impeaching Sara solve our basic problem with rice? Will it solve the everyday challenge of hunger in our country? It won't. And that can only be resolved if government does its job, doesn't take its eye on the ball, and us making the government accountable. Criticizing government doesn't mean you're against government. In fact, criticizing and critiquing government will help government. And that's why survey companies like Okta, we come out with this hunger, self-rated hunger and self-rated poverty studies. It went up in the fourth quarter. The government has to focus on the radix. Keep its eye on the ball. This thing, it's momentary. After this, there's no more argument. Wala na kalaban eh. Ngayon, bakit di kayo umuunlad? Bakit di tayo umuunlad? And by the way,
wala nang excuse.
Pag na-delegitimize tong model na to, papasok ulit yung populists. Nakuha nyo? Yung mga...
So something decisive has to be done.
Kasi Bongbong Marcos represents a particular brand of politics that's more moderate, that's more centrist, that's more liberal. No? And in a sense, what we feel is more appropriate to a lot of people. If he fails to deliver, no matter what we do, the alternative will come into power.
Right, and the alternative might not be the best one. I could see that even the people at the back there are getting overexcited with your passionate interventions on the clarion call. Thank you so much, Professor Ranjit Rye. Thank you so much, Team Dionisio, for that really, really comprehensive overview. Of course, people know that this is not the only platform we're going to discuss things, but we always make sure that this is one of the leading platforms to break down things as they happen, but more importantly, over the long run. Thank you so much. Catch us again next week here on One News. You can also check out the long conversation on Spotify and YouTube. I'm Richard Hidaria, and that was A View from Manila. For One News, all sides, all the time.